Nate, when did you fall in love with soccer?
As early as I can remember, yeah, just I grew up all over the world, so lots of different countries. So I grew up playing unorganized soccer. So I'd say I grew up not loving the organized game, but just unorganized, just street local football. And so as early as I can remember, it was really the only sport that I loved growing up. But lots of different environments, schools, like just recreational, just loving it with your friends.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you mentioned a lot of different locations. I mean, what are some of the spots that you played as a young child?
Yeah, so I was born, raised in Israel, and so in Jerusalem, and so grew up there in an interesting time in the world. It was during the Gulf War, and then my parents moved to Africa, so I also grew up in Africa and Kenya for quite a few years, and then my first time in the States was at 13 when I moved to Pennsylvania, and that was kind of my first foray into like much more, club and organized soccer and things like that, and so experienced a lot of different cultures, different ways of living, different ways of life. And when you're older now as an adult, you realize how special that was and how much that's helped me now. And but as a kid, you're just a kid. You don't know any different. It's just your normal life. So that was just normal. And so yeah, it's just kind of a wild childhood looking back. But yeah, really feel like prepared me for coaching in a lot of different ways, which I'm grateful for.
Yeah, so Israel to Africa to Pennsylvania. I mean, very different cultures, very different languages even. Uh,
Yeah.
did you feel that soccer was a big part of your ability to integrate into those cultures, make friends, all of that?
Yeah, I mean, remember back then it was a lot different. The way you made friends, you just went outside and played with people. You weren't online or anything like that. And so, yeah, that was the only way. And when you're young, you learn languages very quickly. You just learn like, just v very simple things, but you just learn language through play. And so, yeah, football, the game was just how I, made friends. And just especially when you're moving schools a lot and places, it's like just such a common thing. And the rest of the world, it's almost the only game that you can guarantee is constant wherever you move. There might be like in Africa, rugby was big and all these things, but there's only seems to be only one game that's a common language. And so, yeah, that definitely was a pathway to build friendships and all the rest.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. And is there anything that sticks out as maybe the best memory or best series of memories from that time traveling around and just enjoying the game? Anything that stands out?
Stands out. I think, yeah, I think like really early days in Israel, just like playing in like even things like school recess and just playing in like concrete football. I think those are like the best memories. Maybe the memories now are better than what they actually were. But just a very like visceral, like fighting football, like fighting to stay on the court so you don't have to sit and watch. Those types of memories probably where I get my like super competitive streak from, like you're backed into a corner and you have to fight your way out. And so very little like parental influence from day to day. And so that kind of like just be with your boys, be with your friends, just playing football where you think it's really important when you're just out there playing. Yeah, I think those would be my favorite memories looking back.
That's beautiful, man. That's beautiful. And obviously you're a manager within the MLS now. Are there any players from your history that maybe took a non-traditional path to end up in front of you now?
Players right now, yeah, we have a super young team. We have players, man, from all over the place. But I mean, yeah, it's becoming more untraditional now. But we have a player who just made a two. Actually, I'll use two examples. Two players
Mhm.
that just made their debuts for the U.S. men's national team. Emeka Eneli, who was drafted out of Cornell, and now is a starting number six. And for me, more and more from MLS, that is untraditional now. 10 years ago, that was traditional. But to be a college kid to a year later being a starting, a midfielder for the men's national team coming from Cornell. He actually born in Lansing, Michigan. Fun fact.
All right.
And then yeah, I think another good one like Diego Luna, who I coach now, he's a top young player, won Young Player of the Year award. I admire him because he did it through leaving an MLS academy and going and betting on himself as a teenager in the USL, and playing for El Paso and betting on himself that way, getting a big move here. And yeah, I love the players who bet on themselves and don't take just the traditional route. And one of my favorite things is just helping players through their first couple years as professionals. winding the clock way back to 2019, when we started Lansing Ignite, and I was the head coach there, and we had like so many first year pros, tons and tons of players. And what gives me so much joy now is seeing how those guys are getting on now. Guys that they were just a kid that you're giving a shot, and now they're making a great living and have just become a top pro in whatever level they've gotten to. But
Yeah.
guys, and that even though that club folded after 1 year, the legacy that left was just, it gave the opportunity to players to make careers, and that's what the lower leagues are meant to do, because there's just not enough clubs, not enough opportunities for players to come through non-traditional routes, and just the traditional route of coming through as an academy player, like that totally depends on geography, affluency, all these things. And so for me, that is one of my biggest joys now, is like the the early pro years, like their first and second year. It's truly one of my greatest joys and passions, to be sure.
Yeah, well, I can't thank you enough because I have a profound respect for people that step up and start those organizations, knowing full well these are not amateur investors. They know full well the risk of that compared to, investing in a McDonald's, for example. So
Yeah.
they come in and they do it, and to know the guys like you still support it and look out for it, it means a lot to the community. So thank you for that. And what would you say in a young player, maybe the most underrated trait is where you're looking at young players, you're projecting, hey, this might be a long-term success story. What do people fail to see that's an underrated trait that you might identify?
Yeah, that's a great question. In fact, I was just having this conversation with our coaching staff just the other day, a related conversation. And I can't speak for other coaches. I can only speak for me, from my context. But for me, it's like, are you a learner? Can you learn new information and apply it? And are you hungry to learn? Because I would say the player pool is there's a lot of similar players right now. Like there's a lot, like if you hold like a tryout or whatever, you can hold, and there's a lot of players that have maybe a similar profile and what sets you apart. And so players who truly like are able to learn and then able to like apply that learning, but not lessen like their individualism or their own interpretation of the game. And so I really think like being like a learner is super important, because the game has gotten a lot more tactical and a lot more cerebral. You see a lot less just street players that it's, the game has evolved a lot. So being able to like to really learn. And I think the other one too is just just with how young men are growing up nowadays, like a real presence, like a body language, a presence, and the effect on the people that you have around you. Like we would say, like there are very, very few like old school leader types in football. They almost don't exist. And when they do exist, I think their peers call them tryhards, or they're kind of nerdy or whatever. But these guys are like, as a coach, are super valuable for coaches, and guys who can learn and guys who can have such an impact, like have a real presence about them. And those are really intangible things that you can't just like switch on when a player is 19, 20 years old. And so for me, like a lot of the credit to those players goes to their parents or whoever raised them, to be honest, because those qualities now are what's the premium, I think, what's hard to find.
Yeah, man, that's an amazing point. And I do look back historically, and I wasn't a good player by any means, but I played on some really good teams. And there were guys that stood out, guys that you would look at and go, hey, if we were in like a military situation, that's the guy. I'm
Yeah,
following that guy. And
right.
it's more and more rare. I think that's an amazing point, and if you can find it and tap into it, that's awesome, Nate. I'm going to switch gears. I have an interesting one for you. So this doesn't have to just be from MLS or USL or college, just in general. Have you ever had a supporters group that somehow was impactful on your team's performance on the field? And maybe tell me where and how.
Absolutely. San Diego. Absolutely. San Diego.
Okay.
Yeah. The supporter group in San Diego, like that stadium, with that supporter group was one of the most, like it was uniquely San Diego. Like you felt like you were near the Mexican border, but you felt like just the San Diego vibe too. And they were like two kind of supporter groups that like meshed together into one to create a significant vibe. And it was a really tall stand right behind the goal. And second halves, it felt like a magnet to that goal. And like it's almost like you were pinning your opponent up against the wall. And I really believe in this idea of like an intelligent fan base that like that is completely connected to the way your team plays football. And I think there's a huge responsibility of a coach and a club to play football in a way that represents the city. And, you know, if we use like countries and examples of like Brazil or Germany or Spain or these countries that like when you watch them play, you're like, yeah, that feels like that country. And I think that's super important from a clubs as well. So like we really wanted to play like San Diego, be entertaining.
Yeah.
Like people, there's a lot of things to do in San Diego. People need to want to come and be like, that shit was awesome. But so you have to be entertaining. You have to be like flowing. You have to be like playing at a tempo and things. And I think that's something that's really hard to describe and put a finger on it. And people might not be able to like, you know, give you a breakdown of what that is, but it's just something you feel. And that supporter group like felt us and we felt them. And it was an amazing experience. Especially that last year, you know, at the end when they knew we were going away, you even felt it more like, you know, when you know something like a loss is coming, like you're super, you know, you're more grateful for what you have in the moment. So that supporter group, like always thankful to them. So many great memories. I still get messages from people to this day. And yeah, I tell you, maybe 6, 7, 8 times at some MLS city this last year, I would show up in the bus like 2 hours early with the team, and then there's someone outside the bus with a San Diego Loyal jersey, someone I probably recognize, and just wanting to like talk or have an autograph. And it's like they loved the club, and that was something that like I'll never forget.
Yeah, that's really special. And actually, as you're talking about that sort of special feeling that you know it's going away, and this is kind of your last, it reminded me of the show The Last Dance on Netflix.
Yeah, that's
If you've
right.
seen that. And I guess the follow-up question, and this could be actually because of what was done in San Diego or because of now the hindsight and the reflection, and maybe it's an aspirational or creative answer. But how could you include them, or how have you included them in that part of creating it by being involved together? Have you brought them in with the team and said, hello, what are the steps you might take to make it more replicable for another club to be able
Yeah.
to build something special?
Yeah, that had nothing to do with me. You know, like that club was run by, we had an amazing owner and Andrew Vasiliadis, an amazing president and Ricardo Campos. Warren Smith, who's like a USL legend, started the club. He was the founder. And then we had Landon Donovan, which is like the ultimate Trump Joker card. You know, he have Landon Donovan. And so, and they did, I mean, it was like a couple year run in to build the club. And I mean, they include the supporters group in almost every decision at the non-technical decision at the club, it seemed like. And so it really felt like supporter built. So like when the time came to take the pitch, it felt like the supporters because they were a part of the whole thing. That's an exhausting process because as you know, like including thousands of people and you know, like that's a complicated thing. But if you want something special, you have to do the work and it takes what it takes, you know, and I think that oh my goodness, anytime there was a big thing going on at the club, I'm telling you, like our president, our owner, and Landon would get on like a Zoom with like hundreds of people and just get yelled at and whatever. That's what leadership is, right? It's not just sitting there thinking that you know better than everyone. It's listening, it's eating the crap, and it's just going forward and trying to serve the people that it's there for, you know. And I think you have to do that in this country because we don't have 150 years of history to back clubs that like that. So you have to really like inject so much, I guess, soul of your people into the founding of the club because you don't have this huge history to look back onto where you can say this is who we are. So I think that's why I think it's so necessary now because we're still really like a baby country in sorts in football. You know, they're
Yeah.
historic clubs in our country are like, you know, founded in like the 90s. You know, it's crazy. So yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
important.
Where can we go next as a country to give us the best chance at winning World Cup, for example?
Man, yeah, it's so complicated. I mean, for me it's the easiest answer, but it's going to be so hard to pull off. Is you have to somehow create an environment. I would start with select cities where like we're cultivating talent with no payment. It's like, and we've been saying this for so long, but like really great entrepreneurs and startups don't start by, you don't fix the whole country right away. I think you just go, look, I'm not like a youth development grassroots soccer expert. That is not my life. My life is first team football where you get fired if you don't have a good 2 months, you know. But the way I view it from just growing up around the world and just from where I see it of where our players come from, and all our good players that came from overseas grew up poor. And so it's one of those things where it's like, I think that you can start with LA, you can start with Miami, you can start with, warm weather cities that have year-round soccer. And I just think that I think we do need to inject whatever capital we have, however we do it, in an organized way. And I mean, France did this a couple of decades back, and they paid it in Paris, and how they did it, and it's amazing. And I think that it, you need to organize unorganized football. You need to like create a hot pocket intentionally, like cultivate and create and scout and inject personnel, inject like caretakers into hot spots, and just like let the talent flourish, and not and if the talent leaves, let it leave. I think there's this, I talk to a lot of people around the game. They're just so concerned with our best players going to Europe and at young ages, and it's like we we need to be concerned about each player like getting his best opportunity and not trying to block players and do all these things. But I really believe in like using a few key cities as like hot spots of, and I don't know what that looks like, but I know that we need to make it free. And I
Yeah.
know that to make it like safe, and we need to make it like a place where it's like almost like an after school, like a place where like young players can go and play, and we know that it's going on, but not insert ourselves and then suddenly organize it and take away all the soul of it, if you know what I'm saying.
Because I
Yeah.
think we have no lack of soccer brains in this country, but you said it yourself. I think we have a lack of soccer entrepreneurs. I think we have a lack of intelligible business people that want to get into this game for the reason of making the game better.
Yeah.
And if I can be even 1% helpful in doing that, and this team in Detroit can be even 1% helpful in doing that, none of what we're doing is secret, but
Yeah.
we're doing it and we're giving it away for free on the internet because my goal is that 100 other people start these around the country,
Yeah.
free soccer clubs. And I love what you're saying. It's almost like a fateful meeting where I just wanted to see what you thought. And
Yeah. Yeah.
we
No,
may
and I think
be
it's
onto something.
huge. And I think it's like, as our generation now is like, I didn't live here, but was the first generation to kind of like play soccer growing up. So hopefully, like the hopeful part of me is, well, now the generation is coming up now with some means and some resources, and hopefully there's enough of those people like yourself who are like, all right, I have my life and my business that I run here, but like I'm going to put my soul and a lot of my resources and a lot of my contacts into doing this thing. And I think it has to catch traction. And we have a World Cup coming up, so hopefully like that catches more. But yeah, I'm with you, and I just think my biggest thing is I would love like just like the young people with no means, boys and girls who can't afford. Like my son's 10
Yeah.
and daughter's 8, and my son is 6, and soccer's really expensive,
Yeah.
and I just that doesn't, it's not okay.
Yeah.
We need to change that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I feel you. I'm excited to try. That's all I can say is I'm going to try.
great,
So
man.